A very good evening, and thank you for joining our second panel session. So how this is different from the first one, today's focus is on health, and we talk about power up your kids' health. So the focus is on our beloved children, because we all know how important food is to our kids, but it's not just about food. It's about play, the physical movement, food naturally, and what Jessica will bring, right? It's not just about food. We all know the good food, but the habits. Like how do I get my kid to eat the broccoli when they are like constantly pushing it away? And our brain expert, Peter, will talk about why it's so important when we talk about a holistic health for the kids. So I want to introduce my wonderful panelists. Eric is a national bestseller. He co-founded My Gym. If you see the little monkey, the blue color, 6 different franchises around Singapore, because I think it comes out of what he believes in. So later he will share, but he is a national sportsman in Dragon Boat, and he believes that kids should move, which is why your business is as such. Our business is often an extension of what we believe. And that's why Jessica is a coach, a clinical nutritionist, stress consultant, an NLP practitioner, and her business is called Health Coach International. So she's really not a passionate advocate of health. And I just want to share this candid moment. We did have an impromptu Zoom session just to get to know each other. And what was so interesting is I realized she doesn't just say what is truth. She was actually preparing for a hike, right, with your husband, even at this age, and they look so young. And I think what really struck me is that joy on your face, like they really enjoy exercising, not just food. Yeah, so I look forward to the panel discussion. And Peter is very interesting because being a cancer survivor himself, I think his story is so amazing because it was in the terminal stage 4, right? And how when we actually activate our mind, his body managed to recover, complete reversal. And I think that is the kind of natural healing that I want our kids to be brought up in. And if we, the parents, don't know, how are we going to impart it to them? So I want to start this entire panel discussion to debunk some health myths, because there's so much information out there, but what's real and what's not. Some were taught to us by our parents, who were probably old wives still, and then hopefully we don't pass it on to our children. So Eric, if you can start, parents deem physical program as non-essential. No, academic more important now. Preschool already, all the enrichment classes, is the priority. If I have limited resources, come, let's spend on these enrichment classes. I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Julia, for inviting. This woman is really amazing. That the power of spirit, that the energy that he has brought to us, I think is amazing. That really impressed me. So we're very busy, but I think she asked me to come. I really have to come here to do some little bit of sharing. The other panelists will be amazing person to share a little bit more in depth into what we're going to talk about. I think that recently, looking at the past trend of the whole parenting and parents, we have thousands of parents coming to our centers every week. Millions of kids that go through our My Gym centers, over 700 centers over the world. Millions of them come in every year. And we see that this trend in the Asia market, we feel that there are many parents, instead of bringing the kids to a gym or bringing the kids to have play, they intend to bring them into the more academic, more tuition-based type of educations. I find that is not very good for very young children. I have seen parents that at the age of 5 years old, they brought the kids to tuition. Is that really good? I think that's not really good. I think we should put them into physical and make them to be very active. That activeness itself brought out a lot of growth and a lot of chemical being interact inside the brain itself. And this chemical in the brain that created a lot of good feeling and helped the whole entire system to move and to learn. The capacity of learning at a very young age, below 3, below 5, that's a very, very critical moment. Why should I bring the kids into tuitions and get them to do a lot of homeworks and go through their academic success? I think And that's very dangerous. Why I say so, and that a lot of tuition company may not like me to saying that. That why we put the kids in the tuition at a young age is bad, because when the kids, if the kids like it, it's okay. If the kids don't like it, that we're going to spoil the entire learning capacity in the future. It becomes so tired. Imagine we are adults. We are so tired every day. And by the age of 40, I have a lot of friends who are 40 and they tell me that they want to retire and want to slow down. At the age 40, this is the time I want to chong, you know. I'm already 50. At 50, I want to chong again. I want to go faster again. But they say that I'm tired. I want to retire. I want to slow down. So imagine your kids are starting at 5 years old and they chong all the way. When will they retire? They get tired. When they get to primary school, they get tired. When they go to second, they get even more tired. The more and more tired, they lost the learning capacity. And that's not going to be helpful to them. Worse if that this child go to a tuition company, tuition centers, and the teacher is very fierce. Or the teacher is not kind enough. And that's going to spoil. I'm going to hate mathematics. I'm going to hate this particular language. And once the child gets hatred on a certain subject, it's so hard to get him back to the learning capacity again. It's very, very tough. That's why I always tell people, some people may not like that. People ask me, which tuition center should I go? How do I choose a tuition teacher? I say, choose the most pretty tuition teacher.
With a smile on the face.
Choose the most handsome tuition teachers. Why? Oh, don't you feel that we like people who are prettier?
You can relate better.
They can relate. No, when they are young, you like a pretty teacher.
I can be.
Yeah. So I learn faster. I got more motivation to learn.
I love what you share.
Am I right to say that?
Yes, I love what you share, Eric, because you are right. Even if I don't like the subject, the teacher good looking also, I would just say, no, I love how you, and I think in the hearts of a lot of parents, it's because we want to set them up for success in life. And we have decided that academic excellence is the way. But I think a very important part you brought up, right, is yes, but later on in life, right, when you enter the formal education, they will have how many years of this cerebral, later I'm sure it's your area, cerebral mental activity.
Yes.
Let them enjoy their childhood, is what I'm really hearing. So that they develop holistically, not just, my joke now, like Tepo, overdeveloped head, the body completely undeveloped, you know, and then staying that way for the rest of their life. Because we are made in totality. Am I right? Not just with the mind, but with, you know, the body, to stimulate. So I really get your heart. Right. And so like no rush to start our kids off there.
No rush. Let them enjoy that period of time. And children who are below 6 years old, who's supposed to learn? I always say that many times to my parents. The person should do the learning. It's not the child, it's you. You parents have to learn.
Absolutely.
At 6 and below, you better learn. Learn parenting. Learn from Junior.
Yeah.
From each of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I totally 100% agree with you. Because, of course, first, I always believe in an integrative approach, you know, which is not just nutrition, not just physical, but of course, behavioral modification. So it's all three aspects, not just what you eat, not just the exercise part, but really the behaviors, which is going to determine what they take in every day, right?
Yes.
And I also totally agree that, you know, look, it's the parents that need the education. When I do a nutrition workshop, for example, for parents, I tell them, look, if your kids are not eating healthy, if they are eating fast food, if they are having ADHD, super active and so on, whose fault is it?
Mine.
It's your fault, okay? Absolutely, it's the
Yes.
parents who need to learn.
Yes.
Yeah?
Because how much
they
do kids
start
know?
from young.
Yeah.
The habits they copy from the parents. And you have parents, I mean, I'm sorry I get so worked up on this, you know, but you have parents who, daddies, please eat your vegetables. The daddies are not eating and they expect the kids to do it. Kids learn by observing.
I can so identify with what you say. So my husband never used to eat vegetable. But when we had our first child, he's like, eat your carrot. Then I look at him. Set example lah. And thank God my husband was humble enough, like what you say, to learn, and he was like, look daddy eating, you know, to maximize the mileage. And then he took and then ate, and from then on, right, his habit began to change. Because I think the heart of the parent, like what you have brought up, is really as we desire the best for our children. Maybe if we didn't care enough to look after ourselves or to equip ourselves with the knowledge, for the sake of our kids, we begin to shift. We begin to have bigger broaden our horizon and our mindset to learn so that we can give them what we probably never receive.
Yeah.
So I love how straight you are.
Yeah.
So Jessica, I want to ask you, right? Like, you know, you are our food expert. Would you feel, right, that today an unbalanced diet has, you know, like childhood obesity, right? Like, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, childhood obesity is getting to be a big problem, even in Singapore. You know what they have found? The statistic is 13%. 13% of kids are actually obese. School-going age. We're talking about school-going age. So it is really a big issue. And unfortunately, like I said, it starts with the parents, you know, and the habits start early. So really, it's all about how we cultivate our kids. And if you say whether it's linked or not, absolutely, because come on, it's a no-brainer. I mean, we often hear the phrase, you are what you eat.
Yes.
But I always add to that, not just what you eat, but what gets to your cells. It's really about absorption as well.
Okay.
Because you can be taking whatever supplements worth whatever, you know, and so on. But if it doesn't get to your cells, then you're not going to see the effect. Yeah. So really, it's something which, like I said, has to start early. And of course, what you said earlier just now about, you know, behavioral changes, you know, that's what the main thing we need to look at. And again, starts from the parents. Things like, for example, don't ever reward your kids with food. Don't use food as a reward, right? Like, for example, if you study hard, if you get a good, you know, if you score a certain percentage for your exam, you know, I'll take you out for ice cream, or I'll take you out to a certain fast food. So you're using food as a reward. So what message does that give to the kid?
Unhealthy food is to be desired.
Yes, to be desired, and it's something to work towards, you know. Candies, cakes, and all that is something that, wow, if I do well, I get rewarded with this. So it's just subconscious. So never ever use food as a reward.
Then use what?
Other things like toys, like, you know,
or even replace it with
games,
exercise time.
Games,
Like,
exercise,
you know, if you
or
do
walk
it
in the park.
yes, you go playground,
Correct,
you know, like.
yeah. So just don't use food.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got, and what I wanted to ask you, right, is earlier you mentioned about ADHD. Like, in today's time, there's a lot more, like, all these conditions we never had prior to this, right? So is that actually linked to food?
Of course. I mean, I'll say in all cases, I would say about 30% of the cases.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, going back to statistic, 1.4% of the children aged below 4 in Singapore are diagnosed with, challenges, special needs, classified as special needs, or learning disabilities. So there's a very, very high percentage, and it's quite alarming. I mean, I work with a lot of parents with special needs kids to advise them. And I always tell them, look, you know, you if it's not genetic, of course, they will then think back, oh, is there a genetic, basis to it? If it's not genetic, then a very high chances is that it is linked to something inside. That means physiological imbalance. Yeah. So of course, food is one element, but also lifestyle and exercise and so on. Yeah. And the main key thing which is causing it actually is one word: inflammation. Okay, so inflammation. I mean, and they used to think that there is what we call a blood-brain barrier, the BBB, and they used to think that whatever happens here doesn't affect what happens in the brain. But now the science has proven otherwise. That means if you have disturbances or imbalances or nutritional deficiencies happening in your body, it affects the brain, the functioning of the brain. And of course, true enough, people that I consult with, and it's not overnight, because we are not talking about cure, we're talking about reversal. So we have people with Down syndrome, people with autism and so on. After maybe 2-3 years, correcting the diet, and of course always acting exercise into it as well, they're able to see much better improvement, better concentration, better learning abilities. I have one, Down syndrome boy, 13 years old when he started on the healthy diet. 16 years old, I saw him on TV playing drums during National Day.
Wow.
Wow. And I asked the father, I was so happy. I said, hey, I saw your son on TV. And I asked him, how did he learn how to play drums? The father said he learned from YouTube.
I so love what you share, because when you talk about inflammation, it brings hope. I mean, to the viewers out there, because inflammation means it can be reduced to the original, and with the understanding of how science can work for us, conditions that we used to accept as having no cure and for life, now, like what you said, given time and with correction, it's not just intervening and managing it, but it's really allowing the body to recover. And that's what the heart of health, right? I think sometimes we limit it to health, meaning I look good, but it's so much more. And our brain expert, Peter, what do you have to say? You know, how is brain-based therapy? Yeah, this is the nice model of the brain. I didn't know he was going to bring it. So how is, like, to carry on from what Jessica said, how is brain-based therapy carried out? You know, and how is it different from just training programs? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there is certainly a big difference. But firstly, I want to thank Julia inviting me to share this information that I have, and my distinguished panelists here. We had a good time dialoguing and discussing. Now, I brought this brain model here because I think a lot of people have this singular view of what the brain is. They think that, oh, okay, the brain is all about cognition. The brain is all about learning. That's why Singaporeans, parents specifically, they send their kids to tuition, and what Eric said, you know, in the early years of their life. In fact, they're actually not emphasizing or aware that the early years of their life, the focus should not be on the cognition level. The focus should be lower down the brain. So now I'm going to just go through quickly. No brain lecture here, but just 101 basics. Okay, it's very important because it will change your perspective of how you want to fashion your programs to help your kids develop in this new world where things are changing, dynamic, and a lot more emphasis on emotional quotient rather than just IQ. Okay, so now I'm going to dissect the brain. Without a knife. This brain is I've been using it for more than 15 years, so it's a 15-year-old brain, not a child. Okay, so I'm going to dissect the brain. Voila, you see a brain that is got many parts. So briefly, this yellow portion is actually the brain stem. Okay, and this, in short, the name. This is a limbic system. Limbic system because there are three other subsystems inside. I'm not going to go into it, but this is actually a very important system in the early years of the life. Okay, because this is where the emotional centers are. Okay, emotional centers play a huge part in the development of a child. So children need to develop their emotions in the right way, like positive parenting, right reward system. Okay, because it's not all about this. Okay, of course, when we go for tuition, we learn all our math, English, science, and all that. This comes to play. But notice that their years of learning is actually later, 6, 7 years old. They pick up instinctively languages. Okay, it's amazing. The brain is really amazing. Now, I'm going to, because many don't have a model like this, I think difficult to get a model like this nowadays. I was looking for other models similar because some parents ask for it, but I'm going to use my hand as a hand model of the brain. It's amazing, my hand can use. So remember, of course, our brain is supported by the spinal cord. Spinal cord, right? Then you have the brain stem, this yellow, here. And the limbic system, you can put your thumb over it. This is your limbic system. And then you fold it over like this. This will be your neocortex. Okay, the higher brain, neocortex. So I'm just going to briefly touch what are the three different areas. Number one, the brain stem is also called the reptilian brain, you know, lizards. And all this. These are all the insects. They have highly developed reptilian brain. So you notice when you go near a lizard, the first thing is they run away. They react, they respond. Okay? We humans have a reptilian brain as well because it's the oldest brain actually. But the lizards don't have any higher brain. Okay, this is the mammalian brain, which is above. Okay? What separates the lizards from the mammal group, like dogs, cats, and all that, is this mammalian brain, which is the emotional. That's why you cannot go and have a lizard pet that is always coming to you and you can pet. No, they don't have this ability. Whereas a dog, especially higher, more more developed emotional brain. Okay? And they come around you, they like to be loved and all that, just like children. So in the early years of a child's life, like Eric was saying, we need to develop this. This is key to a lot of learning. Many people think it's only this, but actually, the mammalian brain powers the neocortex.
Yep.
Okay, of course, this is what differentiates us from the animal kingdom, being large, big neocortex, which is all the processing. Okay, we thrive as the top living creature on earth because of our ability to process, plan, and all the invention. Whereas animal kingdom, unfortunately, they are largely this. So the development of this plays a huge role when we look at courses or we look at training programs. Okay, brain-based training primarily seeks to provide the brain with the right resources for the brain to develop. Okay, if the brain will naturally develop, but if we do not provide the right resources, we will have a problem. Okay, early years of a child's life, what do? We talk to the child, even though the child is not responding, we interact with them. Because in the early years, many years ago, they did a study in Romania. A lot of kids, not a study, actually it happened in Romania, a lot of kids were left in a ward with no care, no attention to them, and all of them developed neurological problems, difficulties, and all sorts of learning issues come into play. Okay, because there was no human contact. So human contact is very essential for growing years. Okay, so as what the panelists said, parents must be really involved in their development in the early years. Not just, they're there to play by themselves. Okay, because over the years, when I've dealt with some parents and the problems that I have, when I hear the story, normally what I do is let them, when they come and see me with a problem, I always ask them, so early years, what do you do? Most parents always say, oh, I sent my son for this course, I sent my daughter for the training. Wait, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to, how is your parenting style?
Yeah.
What did you do? And I found out that, I bought a bunch of toys, let him play, and he's enjoying himself. I said, there's where the problem is. That's the start of the problem. So that's why he's not able to interact. He's not able to look people in the eye. Okay, so bottom line, brain-based training, what I do is to go back to the basics of how to provide resources to the brain at different stages and help the individual, the child, to grow out of this problem. And by the way, brain, the way we are make up our hardwire, it's able to heal itself over time.
Yep.
It will, provided they are given the right resources. Unfortunately, today in our environment, there are a lot of wrong or inappropriate or not good for them resources given to them excessively, and that causes problem continually into their school years, even into their adult. And then there you have a society problem.
I so love what you're sharing, Peter, and why we right to say that I love this model of this brain because I think
nice.
it literally opens up and then so colorful. And I think what you're pointing to, right, is the devices that we talk about digital age, where when we were growing up, we only had playground, right? Climb the trees, run, play catching with friends, play marble. Mine was 5 stone, 5 stone, and then the 0 point. And I think unconsciously, right, in what you're sharing in the first 7 years, look at Finland's system. It's really not about the cognitive part, but in anchoring the child in the security. So I think in the first 6 years, it's really that relational. It's really the touch, the hug, the affirming words, the connection. Above all that cognitive part, which, we have the rest of our lives to do, so why rush it, right?
Yeah.
So even in Finland's system, as long as the anchor, like as an individual, if I'm very secure in who I am, will I not be more open to enjoy studying for the joy of learning, not to get grades? But I think sometimes we are so driven by our rat race as adults that we start the kids on their own academic chase, paper chase, even earlier.
Yeah, actually I like your term rat race. I came across a sentence that says, in a rat race, only the rats win. Right? So to reinforce that point, you see, when, in the younger days, in our time, earlier years, the games we play, what are they? They're actually very social games. We cannot play 5 stone by ourselves.
Yeah.
You cannot play chate by yourself. And what's the other games? The
0 point,
0 point, 5 square, 1 leg, and all those things are now absent. So what do? Digital. And digital, you don't need anyone. You need to focus. So you think you're training focus, but actually the development in the early years, this is not developed well. So that's why they become more introverted. They do not like their space to be encroached, and they want their own way, because games like this, those gaming triggers a lot of impulses, action impulses, and this is more triggered and this is less triggered. So for starters, for the brain, my brain-based therapy approach is this. This is the reactive part of the brain. This is the receptive part where the processing. I call it receptive. So most of the kids that have issue, they are overreactive, less receptive. So I'm trying to change the equation to be less reactive. They don't react so much and they are more receptive. So basically what I'm trying to attain a balance here is that in the end, when they start to develop, the upper brain, I call the high road upper brain, will have more exercise of control over the lower brain or the low road.
I think the science in this is so real, because I think a lot of kids, you just take away the iPad, you can see their behavior immediately reactive, right? I want the iPhone or the iPad, right? And then this, I can imagine if it keeps getting fired up and stimulated, after a while, it's like it's so overheated almost. It's no wonder the development of this becomes close, right? Like I'm not so open to that. And even as we're talking about the science, I want to throw it back to physical development, because we all know that, like we talk about basic things like crawling. You know, I think sometimes we are too fast to move Mother Nature, where we are like, milestones, you know. Mine can walk at like 8 months, yours, you know. But I realize, right, in just reading, and I want to throw it back to you because you're the physical expert. You know, when kids skip a developmental stage, it doesn't serve them. Correct? In fact, many of them go back at like 8, 9 years old to begin to crawl, to make the connections work, because our brain literally grows from inside out.
Yes. So coincidentally that we just spoke about that, right? Isn't it? Outside having our tea break. Then, I think we shouldn't. I think as parents, don't ever feel that so proud about your child that you skip one phase of the development. That's actually no good. It has to go through a normal nature. You have to crawl, you crawl. You cannot just skip the crawling. And a lot of parents feel like so proud that my child don't crawl, it's suddenly walk already. And then that's not really.
My child gifted. I'm just, you know,
I'm glad I crawled first.
Go through the crawling, and then go through the turning, and then stand to walk. And then that is a nature way that we really have. But from a science perspective, maybe Peter, you can tell us what is it so important that from a science side, that it shouldn't skip at all.
Oh yes, crawling stage should not skip. And anyway, even after they skip the crawling stage and become, they creep and then suddenly they start walking. Oh, very advanced. And then later years when a parent realize, hey, need to crawl. When you get them back to crawl, the window of opportunity is over. Okay, so during the creeping stage, you must get them to crawl. And what is the science behind it? It's actually very interesting, because over the years, I do have, and parents, what you say is right, advance. They skip one stage, like we want to jump from primary school to post-tertiary. We don't need the secondary school. Actually, it doesn't work that way. The brain has a phase of development. Now, when a child does not crawl, what actually happens? You see the left and the right brain. Now, I didn't mention earlier, the brain is a very integrated piece of organ, the most complex organ in our body actually. It has the lateral integration, means from the brainstem, limbic, emotional system to your intelligence system, the neocortex we call. There's the vertical. Now the horizontal, we have both left and right brain. So if people were to say, hey, you need to develop your left brain, but I think the better approach is to develop a holistic whole brain, because that is the way our brain is being design. We need to use both half of the brain, because they have very important critical functions that they need to interact. Now, coming back to the crawling stage, if the child misses a crawling stage, and this is my observation, and of course there's already a science behind it. Now, how does the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain interact? Okay, firstly, I want to say that why there are such thing called right brain programs in the early years, but when you go to the later years, nobody talks about right brain. They go into intelligence. Because there's a science behind it. Firstly, this limbic system is connected to the right brain, not the left. Okay, so it's connected from here, brainstem, limbic to the right. And the right is triggered by a lot of development here. That's why early years emotional development is critical. You cannot skip it. Okay? Now, as the brain continues to develop, how does the left and the right develop? It's through this little bridge. The name is called corpus callosum. You don't have to remember that, but it's a bridge. When a child crawls, this bridge is widened. So imagine a bridge of a certain width. Okay? Research over the years have shown that actually female's bridge is wider than the male's bridge.
Oh,
Yes, interesting,
Very
eh?
advanced.
Yeah, you're more advanced. That's why one of the evidences you see is that the females handle better with languages than the male.
Yep, yep.
Males somehow have this problem of languages, maybe too much on the left side or whatever. Now, when we crawl, when you make the child crawl, during the window of opportunity, I call it, what happens is that the bridge becomes wider, becomes stronger. When you don't crawl, it's very, very narrow. So, if the child skips the crawling stage and think that it's advanced, actually it's not, it's actually going back.
Yeah.
So, what happens is, imagine a bridge that needs a two-way traffic. Okay? If you have a narrow, single bridge, only one at a time. So you see, when you start the process, this child is a little bit slow or lopsided, or not able to see, you've got to wait, a lot of issues in development. That's why crawling is important. It's actually important.
Is there a particular time, age, or just let every child develop uniquely?
Yeah.
Because every child is different, right? So
Yes.
just
I wonder is there any link between special needs and this crawling? If the children miss the crawling stage, is there an impact to the
There are
to the special needs?
influences. Yes. Special needs is not just about this, because most of the cases that I see, there are this area that is very, very prominent when the issue come up is learning difficulties. They have issues. They are like any normal kid, fun-loving, they like to play, they like to interact. But when it comes to going to school, the problem shows up where they are unable to solve the challenges that the academic system provide. So they are, so parents start to remediate it by sending them to different courses, which whatever. By the time you have this limitation, the hill to climb is very steep. Versus a child that doesn't have this, they just learn it like that. Then you wonder,